It's not calling you Josh Frydenberg, it's calling you Dosh Frydenberg.
Under the Coalition, taxes for hard-working Australians will always be lower.
You know, I don't hold a hose, mate, and I don't sit in the control room.
They're answers that only can come from Victoria, I'm afraid, because that's not my job.
But I ain't spending any time, though, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person was torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Well, good day, listeners, and welcome once again to the Two Jacks. It's episode 158. Is that right? 158, that must be right. But we're recording this, more importantly, on the 29th of May. And when I say we, that is myself, Jack the Insider, and my cousin, Hong Kong Jack. G'day, mate. How are you?
I'm well. Well
How are things in... Sorry, mate. How are things in Hong Kong?
Hot. The heat has really kicked in now. You know.
But you still won't refuse the black shirt. You're still walking around the black shirt, just absorbing all that heat and humidity. Have you got any white ones in the cupboard?
No, I don't. In fact, I've been out of the hospital this morning, so I've got a cough that won't go away. And I don't know about you, but I walked in, and the doctor I'd normally go and see, he's the bloke I really like's gone back to Germany, and the other bloke is on leave. So this fella's new. And I walk in, and he's wearing a mask plus one of those headbands with the Perspex masks on the front of it, right? You know?
All right, yeah.
Yeah. And I've got to tell you, that doesn't inspire confidence in me.
It doesn't or what, does it? Either that or you're hugely diseased, Jack. And
it's just one of those things.
You could be typhoid Mary.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that, look, if they're going to wear this sort of stuff, they just don't understand, do they, really?
In the wrong caper. Yes. Look, it would make a consultation rather difficult, I would imagine.
Well, I can hardly hear a word he says.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, you can muffle conversation behind the PPE.
So he's shouting in my ear through his two double layers of mask. It was quite comical, really, you know. And,
I would have just grabbed some cough medicine at the chemist, mate, and gone with that.
I should have. Yeah, I should have gone to our magic famous Fander, where you can get just about
all sorts of things.
I think the only thing you can't buy there is benzos. Everything else, just about they'll sell you across the counter.
Yeah, how wonderful! All right, we are doing our program today with a focus on what's going on in UK politics, Sir Keir Starmer, who his rivals are, and what have you. But we're going to have to kick it off with the Albanese budget. Well, the Chalmers budget, I guess. Sixth budget, I think, Chalmers' sixth budget, including a December statement, I think, that was made after the first election in 2022. But it's definitely not going down well. And we talked about this last week, Jack. The sorts of people that they might have got on board, tried to get on board with this budget. Well, they're not seeing anything. It's not as if they're, magically seeing another 50 pineapple turn up in their pockets all of a sudden. It's not like that. So the critics are perhaps the loudest, and the sales job is not going terribly well.
Yeah, I suspect it'll be the Chalmers budget from here on in because it's not going all that well. And Elbow is nothing if not shrewd. The sales process has gone particularly badly, and that's in part, I think, because they just seem astounded that they're getting some pushback, which I don't understand, because every budget you're going to get some pushback from somebody.
Yeah, and there's always one quarter or another of the community that are going to feel like they're being hard done by. And in this case, as we discussed last week, Jack, the sorts of lines they should be coming up with is that, salary earners, wage earners should be taxed at the same or similar rates to those who who earn their money from investments. I mean, it's not much harder than that. But I guess there's complexity there too, because let's say salary earners, they probably for the most part, don't have a lot of concept about how people live entirely off investments.
No, that's true. They've just they go out there, they look completely bewildered every time someone gives them a hard time about it. And I don't understand that, right?
Yeah, they have accepted the broken promise stuff. They've got all their lines prepared for that. They've owned that, but it still is a problem, isn't it? And let's just look at the issue of lying more generally, lying to the Australian public. There's a sort of deleterious effect that we're sort of kicking down. I mean, it's not just Albanese. I'm not suggesting that, but when politicians in government lie to the Australian people, what it does is strip away that trust, doesn't it, between government and the people. And I think those things are at a sort of all-time low anyway, the relationship between government and the people. And when you look at some polling that indicates that people would prefer not to be living in a democracy, those sorts of things, large numbers, there's clearly a lot of trust being lost. I suspect a lot of it comes down to the pandemic too, where not so much lies were the issue, but government overreach was certainly an issue perceived by many, particularly those who lost work and so forth in the pandemic. There are trust issues around this that can't be ignored.
Yes, I don't think people mind, or they're used to, and they accept that politicians will change their mind, will fudge, or do that all that sort of thing. They resist being told something that everybody knows is untrue. If you go back to the COVID thing, to the pandemic, people being told that a 9 o'clock curfew was a good plan when everybody knew that wasn't true. It was a good plan if you work for Victoria Police. Yes, but the idea of people telling you this was a safety issue and nobody really believed that. That's the thing that eats away at trust. The things where everybody knows it's not true and everybody's got to go along with it, and that eats away at trust.
Agreed. I think there are, and it's probably something that we should devote a program to, Jack, just how pandemics are such an odd sort of calamity that when they finish, everyone just sort of goes back to where they were, sort of thing, get back on with earning a quid, get back in the office, all that sort of stuff. But we really don't have that time to actually look back at what's happened and analyse it properly. I think that's
a lot of people don't want to do that because they made some awful errors, right? So no one wants to go back and say, well, gee, I was the author of the 9 o'clock curfew, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we know who the author.
Yes, I think we do. But
it was Victoria Police. What would you like? What would you like in terms of making sure people aren't on the streets? Well, let's have a curfew. Of course, that was a Victorian thing. I don't think curfews were ever a thing in New South Wales or in any of the other states. But of course, we were locked down from time to time, and even that was uneven. So there was this sort of sense that government was overreaching, and I can happily justify why this was the case. Certainly in the first year of the pandemic, no vaccines, no real, for the first 6 months at least, no real means of treating this condition, and people were dying in considerable number. And really, if you're in the public health business, you're going to reach for extremes in order to reduce the number of people infected and the number of people who die. When you don't know what you're dealing with, you've got to be conservative in the way you deal with things. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. So where we are now with the budget, beyond the broken promise, now we're hearing, people won't invest, or not as many people will invest. Or indeed they will go offshore. That all seems a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? I see some articles there saying, why don't you invest in Ireland, or why don't you invest in other jurisdictions in other countries of the world?
capital is much more mobile, and people are much more mobile now than they've ever been. So that to some extent that will happen.
Well, the corporates have always done it. You know,
yes,
the big corporates.
But now individuals can do it as well, much more easily. So that will happen to some extent. To what extent, it's kind of really difficult to know.
It's a little bit hysterical, though, isn't it? You know, this idea that capital will flee the country on the basis of what we've, both agreed a relative, sort of tinkering with capital, with investments. It's a little bit much, isn't it? I do see these guys pop up on social media and they're leaving the country and they'll never come back and all this sort of stuff, because we saw this in the UK, didn't we? With a fairly high tax regime in Starmer's first budget, that led to some very public departures from the UK and setting themselves up in Dubai. And then, of course, Dubai got bombed, so they all had to come home.
Yeah. But the UK's got a long history of that.
The Rolling Stones,
yes,
Jack.
They didn't record in the south of France because they liked the weather. Or not solely because they liked the weather.
Well, my understanding of that recording period was Keith Richards, he could have been anywhere. Yeah. So, look, there is that anti-investment vibe. The polls we'll have a look at in a minute. Business groups are up in arms. And the coalition, let's have a think about the coalition, Jack. You would think they're going okay, but the polling says otherwise.
Just before we get on to that, what do you think will happen to the budget? Will they get most of it through, all of it through? Because it's gone through the House, but now it's in the Senate and they need crossbench support to get it all through. I suspect that the crossbench might save them from some of the worst of the bits of the budget.
I think there's going to be, and there has been already, some negotiations on certain issues, particularly around small business, using trusts and those sorts of things, agriculture, as we talked about last week, farmers, etc. I think there'll be a lot of negotiation. Warren Ayres today in The Australian has said, look, we're not going to be giving too much away. So, yes, negotiate away, but we won't. But the changes won't be dramatic. But I think there will be a bit of to and fro. Of course, Jack, we must say this as political historians ourselves, that the convention, parliamentary convention, since 1975 means the coalition in this case and the crossbenchers should be pushing it through.
Well, that's true of the appropriation bills, but it doesn't cover every little bit of the budget. For various reasons.
And it's worthwhile mentioning that it's only a convention. It's not. It's not necessarily. It's not LAW.
But there's also a bit of a history of sometimes the Senate saving governments from the more extreme end of their ideas by chopping them off, and the government might complain about it at the time, but in 2 years' time they might be very grateful that happened. Right?
There will be. I mean, I guess you've got to say that there needs to be good faith in negotiations. Labor only needs the support of the Greens, and I think that's it now, because there have been a couple of defections to Labor, two now, and they'd need just the support of the Greens. Would you be negotiating with One Nation?
Or David Pocock, and he's a factor in it.
Without just looking at the hard numbers, I think with the two defections, I think one from the Greens and one from the Jackie Lambie network, that probably means they need only one more off the cross besides the Greens, if the Greens all vote in a block, which they do. So should they be negotiating with One Nation, Jack?
there's probably no upside for them in doing so.
I can't see any upside in that, no. Just very briefly, as a little bit of a departure, what did you make of the One Nation gas policy, Jack? Did you have a little bit of a look at that during the week?
I had a quick glance at it and didn't get back to it, so I really have no comment to make on it.
I think, the One Nation increasingly is becoming a sort of populist party, and there is this popular move to adopt these sort of nation-building exercises around our mining, and so it certainly tinkered or titillated voters who might be swayed by that. There is a very strong argument going through the community at the moment that the major parties seem to have ignored, Jack, that having these big nation-building projects, taxing mining to create national wealth is something that I think a lot of Australians now agree upon. And it gets worse when we look at our gas, at what's been going on in our gas, where we receive negligible royalties, negligible revenue from the petroleum tax, and it's all sort of locked in a ship and carted off elsewhere. And I think a lot of Australians sort of take umbrage with that. They're not easy to do, these things. If you are looking at something like the Norwegian model, you have to do it at the start. You can't just sort of break in there. And if you do try and break in there with a new tax regime for the mining companies, well, mining companies will just punish you in the media day in, day out. So what do they have to do? They have to negotiate in good faith to get a lot of these things through, Jack.
Get whatever they can through. And if they miss a few things, just shrug your shoulders.
Dust yourself off and move on. Look, like I say, I think that's the way it will go. They will negotiate with the coalition. I doubt very much there won't be much discussed with One Nation. And, of course, they'll have to negotiate with the Greens. So, there are two very distinct voices there wanting two separate things. Interesting from the Secretary of the Treasury today. Is it Jenny Wilkinson, I think? She's talking about the fact that the CGT changes won't and changes to negative gearing won't change housing supply very much, which is what I always thought was the case, Jack. It can't affect, because it's not building more houses. It's just it might. I mean, I was listening to some investors, housing investors, small and medium sized, and now they're all looking at new builds, but with a sort of desultory sort of feel about it. There was a auction in South Yarra that of a house in South Yarra. I think it went for $4 or $5 million, and it was a pretty lovely house in South Yarra. And one of these investors was going to have a crack at it, but decided not to. With the negative gearing change, the CGT changes as well, and decided he was going to invest his money, look at new housing somewhere, and that South Yarra property was passed in. And when we hear our real estate guys, not that any of this has kicked in yet, it won't until 2027, 28.
But the sentiment seems to have kicked in already. Melbourne had a pretty poor weekend, I think, auction-wise last week.
Yeah, it did, and we're seeing similar things in Sydney at the moment too, Jack. So maybe it's taking that bubble out. I mean, the bubble was, we talk about real estate bubbles, but they don't really happen in Australia because we do have this supply issue. Supply dominates it. So really the issue around housing, the main fix is really about supply, isn't it?
We should have a look at the Kiwi experience, because they tried something, started in Auckland, the business of freeing up the redevelopment of residential buildings. You know, you can knock over your Auckland home and put up a block of flats. And they seem to have kind of solved their accessibility problems for real estate.
They've still got a significant rental problem there, Jack. We will have a look at some. In fact, we put it on our to-do list to look at housing around the world and those countries. We did look at and certain jurisdictions. We did look at Dallas-Fort Worth and some of the planning models that they changed to create smaller housing on smaller properties rather than the sort of the quarter acre block that Australians are used to. So yeah, we should definitely have a look at that. What about the Mamdani New York experience, Jack?
The rent
tax the
controls.
bejesus out of the empty billionaire houses. We just don't have that many. That's the problem.
No, we don't. His whole suite of things is looks like it's heading to disaster for me.
Well, he's got the budget in surplus with a little bit of assistance from Albany, which is the state government. But those things, I think something like Mamdani, it's pretty much unworkable here. But we do see as we drive around our cities that we see a lot of empty housing, Jack.
We do. Things like rent control wouldn't fly here, and they don't really work in New York either. They work if you're the person who's a beneficiary.
Lucky enough to live in one. Yeah. I do look at real estate stuff popping up all the time, and New York apartments. The rental on a New York, Manhattan apartment, Jack, it's nothing like. Well, I guess it's in the same ballpark, but Sydney real estate or renting is dearer. Not your littles, but your 2 bedrooms and your 1 bedrooms in New York, generally coming in around about $2,000 or $3,000 a month, Jack. That's US, of course. Anyway, let's look at the polling now, Jack. This is a Redbridge poll. I did have a good look at it. Labor has an estimated first preference vote of 31, which is down 4%. They're saying there, so presuming they're reflecting that against the last election, where it was 34.
Yes, that's true. I think
34.56 was so they rounded up. One Nation is plus 22 on the last election. They're at 28. Coalition 21, minus 11 since the last federal election. Greens 11, minus 1. They really haven't changed very much. Although the Farah by-election, Jack, threw up, I think the Greens got 2%, and really copped a hammering there. I suspect that will happen a lot across regional Australia, but others around 9. So others are always underestimated in polling, folks. And they're down 6 from 15 last time. I'd expect it to be. I'd expect that sort of 12, 13 to be in place at the next federal election. We keep talking about this, Jack, but once we think about a margin of error on this particular poll, or anyone we want to look at, and I haven't seen the numbers that went into it, but let's say there were 1,500, which is pretty common, 1,500 respondents. You've got about a 3% there, which takes you up to that 34 where Labor was in the first place, if indeed the errors are there. So there's not a lot happening there on the left. The Greens not moving much. Labor, let's say they're down 2 or 3 points in the middle of the electoral cycle. It wouldn't be something you'd be terribly worried about. But then we get over to the right, and it's all like it's a great big bin fire, Jack. You've got, between One Nation and the Coalition, you've got 49% of the vote.
Yes, that's my point. Yeah,
and that's fairly significant. So but we're not seeing that move from the right. So I just don't know what's going on there. Sorry, we're not seeing that movement from the left. We've got. Let's accept these figures at Labor at 31, so they're down, let's say 4 for rounding. Greens down one. But One Nation, the coalition, have gone to what was about 33 at the last election, up to 49, and I'm not entirely buying that either at the moment.
Well, the Redbridge Boffins, their predicted result, let's just take their medians, would be another election would be Labor gets 76, One Nation gets 53, and the coalition gets 12. And that's a kind of a narrow win for Labor, a comfortable win.
I read the poll,
and I kind of suspect that's about where it is. But the combination of the coalition and One Nation are kind of close enough with an election some time away to bring that gap back.
Yeah, I mean, it was 49-51 if we took. And there are so many assumptions about One Nation preferences. It's difficult to deal with.
No one really knows for sure how that's going to work out, do they? You know, I mean,
but yeah, that 49, the two combined, look, it seems high. And what I mean high, I'm not saying that the polls are misrepresenting their respondents. I'm simply saying that what we might be seeing is a sort of manifestation of a protest vote, and whether that extends all the way to the next election, or it remains to be seen.
Yes. So I think the lesson for Labor in this is that in some elections, you, at the end of them, you can say you've really won the battle of ideas, and your ideas are now the predominant ideas. So 83, when Hawke won the Malcolm Fraser approach, that was finished, right? I think on these numbers, Labor oughtn't to kid itself that it's absolutely won the battle of ideas, because it hasn't really. It's a 59, 40.
Just the sale of the budget would tell you that they have. They are not in command of the battle of ideas. Yeah, and so, look, there are some unknowns there.
Which is not to say they're not likely to win the next election. They are, right?
Oh, but hard heads in the party should be looking at this with some alarm.
Yes.
How do they shore up their regional vote? Because Labor has a regional vote. The other thing, Jack, and I was talking to our old mate Tony Sheehan just a week ago. He gave me a bell. We both had a quick chat and a little bit of a giggle. With these sorts of polling results, the National Party disappears. All but disappears. It might the member for Maranoa might get in. I think it's one of the safest seats in the country. But you wouldn't have too much money on the Nats having more than one or two seats in the new parliament. What happens there, Jack?
Well, they're just going to have to dust themselves off. That's as simple as that.
That they can. I think once you reduce to one or two, all the funding goes for a start,
yes,
or most of it.
Yes. Yeah.
We probably should again devote an entire program to this. I think the Nats, when we look at a protest vote of the kind of One Nation, and maybe it's more serious than that, but we look at the Nats and go, well, who are your constituents, and why aren't you acting on their behalf? You see so many farmers that are just virulently anti-national. These days.
I quite like, what's his name, the current leader, Matt Canavan. I think.
He'll never die wondering, will he?
No, but I quite like him. But the tradition with the Nats, one of their strengths has been that they have had really good leaders. In the Fraser years, Anthony and Sinclair and the bloke from Gippsland, whose name escapes me at the moment. We're all good.
Me too. Good man, Darren Chester.
Tony Sheehan's business partner, I think he still is. McNamara, the Victorian National Party fellow, is a really quite impressive man, and was a good leader. But at the moment, Canavan aside, there isn't a strong bench, really, is there? You know?
No, Canavan, as I say, will never die wondering. He's a feisty character. You might not agree with everything he says,
Good
but at least you've got to admire his willingness to get into a battle.
And he can take an argument up. He's a good communicator, all that kind of stuff. Just what you'd expect, right?
Sorry, mate.
But they haven't got enough of those, right?
No. They've got some real dead wood there. Just by way of explanation, our good mate Tony Sheen was a former treasurer of Victoria. I think he played over 300 games of footy at La Trobe University as well. He got the ultimate hospital hand pass, didn't he, Jack? Oh, you can be treasurer now, and behold your smoking wreck of an economy, and try and put that shit back together again.
I think
in the dying days of the Kerner government.
He got there just in time to join. I can't think who else was on the billboard with him as the guilty party with their photos.
He was named as a guilty person. Yeah. All right. The Teals, are they going to join? There's a couple of good arguments for them to do it, and a couple of good arguments for them not to do it. To have a Teal party, of course. A number of those Teal MPs have said no, but it sort of makes a bit of sense. But when you become a political party, you lose all that sort of independence that perhaps was a vote winner in the first place.
Well, the two who are keen on it, Azali Steggall and Warringah and Allegra Spender and Wentworth, I suspect you could get a Teal up in those two seats, a member of a Teal party up in those two seats. I wouldn't be so sure where Monique Ryan is, that I think she would need to be an independent to win that seat.
She Monique Ryan is one who...
she's in Kooyong.
Yeah, I mean, she's in Kooyong, but she sort of didn't warmly greet the idea, Jack. Neither did Kate Cheney from WA. I suspect she would have some problems there too.
Yes. And Helen Haynes in Indi especially would have problems. I don't think.
Well, she's not really a Teal. She predates the Teals, of course. So does Ali Steggall, for that matter. Yeah. I think there is, particularly for those independents like Zali Steggall, there is much to be, I think it's a great voting determinant to vote for an independent. It's Ted Mack in North Sydney for many, many years. People voted for Ted Mack because they thought in North Sydney, which was a Liberal stronghold for many, many years, they would vote for Ted Mack as an independent because they wanted an independent voice in Canberra. And joining the Teal party is not going to get that.
Kooyong's about as blue blood Liberal as you can get,
even more now since the redistribution. This hived in a great part of Toorak into it. So, look.
So there's a difference between convincing Liberal Party voters, pretty rusted-on ones, to vote for an independent and convincing them to vote for another party. And I think that would be a stretch too far for Monique Ryan.
Yeah, I think that would be a problem for her. I agree with you there. I think there are some benefits too. But when we look at this, Jack, we've got to look at with the Teals now having at least the ability to form their own political party if they chose to, or if enough of them chose to. You've got to look back at this and say, why did the Liberal Party squander their constituency like this? And then, without that constituency, and we're talking about Toorak, we're talking about the North Shore, Whale Beach, Newport, all this sort of stuff, Manly, all these sorts of things. Why did they let them go? Like I said, 2 years ago, Peter Dutton, or 3 years ago, Peter Dutton was talking about the Liberal Party as the party of regional Australia. And you go, no, you're not. No, you're not. You used to have be the party of blue bloods around the wealthier areas of Sydney and Melbourne.
Mm.
They've given it away. And it's got to the point where they can't get it back. But when we look at people like Zali Steggall and Allegra Spender and other Teals, ordinarily they would have fitted into the Liberal Party. as candidates.
Yes, of course.
Well, Kate Cheney's the daughter of daughter of Fred, and a wonderful small Liberal he was. Allegra Spender too.
Yes, she's a daughter of Liberal royalty.
Yeah, so it's like these people would be in the Liberal Party anyway.
Well,
so but there was never any effort to bring them into the fold, Jack.
But this has happened around the world. The parties have, the axis is shifting a little bit. It's the same way that, in the United States, the Democrats have abandoned the working class, right? And they largely have in the UK as well, right? The left of the party, the left-wing party, Labor, has largely abandoned the working. You sort of wonder why they did it, but it's happened over 20 years.
Well, we will leave the very last word on the Teals becoming a party to Bob the Hat Catter. Of course, he was a member of the National Party in the Joh Bjelke-Petersen days. I think he was a National Party representative in his first crack, and then he jumped ship. Have I got that right, Jack?
He did. That's right. I think, yeah. I think his father was a Nat as well, wasn't he? Well, Country Party member.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And look, just to go on with Catter, there's been a view around that his seat of Kennedy, which takes in Cairns and goes all the way out to the Queensland Northern Territory border, huge seat. There was a view that Labor preferences got him over the line. Now, Labor does preference Catter above the Liberal Party or the LNP in Queensland. But when we look at the results, Bob Catter rarely goes to preferences. And when he does, it doesn't mean that much. So it's a little bit of a misnomer. Anyway, Bob Catter said of the Teals joining into a party, he said, "I came out of the party system and the last thing in the world I want to do is go back into it, I can assure you." Yes,
which is in a way is a shame. I just think the idea of Bob sitting around the table with Allegra Spender and Monique Ryan and Sally Stegel, you could sell tickets to that.
I don't think he'd be on the invitation list, Jack. But of course, once you've got a party, then you've got a constitution, you've got rules, you've got regulations, and independents don't have those problems. So anyway,
can I just say I don't know what the Teals have done wrong. But they don't deserve this. But Malcolm Turnbull's endorsed the idea of them having their own party.
I did see him being interviewed, and apparently he speaks regularly to them. But he also maintained that he speaks regularly to Anthony Albanese. What was the term? Jim Chalmers, of course. He said, "I'm just fortunate enough to have them and take my calls." I don't know how many he'd be putting into the Liberal Party or how many he'd be getting back from there, but we shall see. Now, our leading story for this podcast, Jack, is Sir Keir Starmer's woes in the United Kingdom. He's been hanging on by his fingernails, and the fingernails must be popping out now. Andy Burnham, the former mayor of he's current mayor of Greater Manchester.
He doesn't need to resign until he wins the seat, if he does.
Yeah, that's right. So he might still have a gig. He has been pre-selected to run in the seat of Makerfield. Tell us a little bit about what you know in Makerfield, Jack. It's in Manchester, so it's Burnham's backyard.
It voted 65% for Brexit. It's 97% white, fairly Christian, 68% Christian, and the Reform Party won every seat within Makerfield that it was up for election during the recent local government elections. So you would say this is a tough ask for Burnham. The betting shops have him slight favourite, and the polling just favours him, but not by much.
Not by much. Just sticking with this idea of him running in the seat of Makerfield, what happens if he loses? does he say, well, I'll grab another seat? Because I don't think he can do that. It's really stay as Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Yes. That's how I would read it. I think if he loses this, he's done.
So let's look at the other way. Let's look at it. Let's say he wins. What happens?
He said he will mount a challenge. Starmer at this stage has said he will hang on. I kind of doubt that he can survive against. I think Starmer could probably survive a Wes Streeting's kind of launched a campaign, but not really, not with any conviction.
No.
I suspect that Starmer could hang on and survive a challenge from Streeting, but Burnham gets a degree more support, and I don't think he could survive. Starmer could survive that.
He would have to be, Jack, Andy Burnham, that is. He's been a very successful Mayor of Manchester, but he would be much further to the left than Starmer, and Labor generally is at the moment.
Well, the Parliamentary Party is well to the left of the membership. Sorry, well to the right of the membership. The membership is much more left wing than the Parliamentary Party, and their problem is that's true, but they're both more left wing than the majority of the population, the majority of voters in any event. Right?
I did see Tony Blair pop up this week telling or advising Starmer to get rid of net zero, Jack.
Did you read the 5,000 words?
No.
It's
too short, mate.
It's quite extraordinary. Well, it's actually this one's actually worth a read. I don't normally read anything that's 5,000 words, but this is actually worth a read because he's managed to shift the debate even within the Labor Party, sort of overnight. There's been a bit of fun had with it. The first comment I saw was that someone was describing it as an encyclical, from Pope Tony, which I thought was quite good. But yeah, it's not just net zero. Most of what he says in the 5,000 words has currency elsewhere in the right around Europe. I mean, there's nothing much he said about net zero or over-regulation that Chancellor Merz has not already said in Germany, that they too think that net zero should be a guideline somewhere in the future, and he wants to abandon fixed targets, for instance. Right? All of that's unremarkable.
I read reports without reading the piece, but Burnham has replied and warned. Basically, he came out basically punching, saying that Blair's 5,000 words did not contain the word
inequality.
Inequality did
yes.
not contain the word inequality. And Burnham's view is that the UK has suffered from 40 years of neoliberalism, of which Tony Blair was a significant contributor, or the Blair government was a significant contributor. Fair to say, or fair to remind people, that he was a minister it was Blair or Brown?
In the Brown government, I think.
Brown, right. So a little bit different.
Not much different.
Not much different. But Burnham's argued that while the Blair government did great things, it did not deviate from the fundamental market-driven direction set in the 1980s, which he claims has been unkind to working-class communities. Blair hit back during a BBC Radio 4 interview, questioning the logic of Burnham's timeline and asking if Burnham truly believes nothing good happened for the business community or the country during the new Labor decade. There's a little bit of reputational bluing there going on, Jack.
It's always struck me as odd just how, when I speak to British Labor people, Labor with a U people, how much they disliked Tony Blair. I mean, he was by a very great distance the most successful Labor Prime Minister there's ever been. He won 3 elections, 2 by a landslide, and changed the direction of the country. No other Labor Prime Minister has really gone close to that sort of record, nowhere near it.
No, that's right.
And despite that, quite a lot of Labor people I speak to really despise the man. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
The Iraq War was probably his bête noire. That is where he lost, I guess, support. But look, we're going back into history there. If we just want to look at the present, Andy Burnham said in response to the 5,000 words offered by Tony Blair, if you don't get how inequality is driving politics now, then you are not understanding what's going on. So is it inequality that's driving reform, Jack? I suspect it is, isn't it?
No, it's not.
What do you think it is? Immigration.
I think it's immigration, and it's the sort of thing. It's more the sort of things Tony Blair's talking about. If you're looking for a fix to the problems that are driving reform, that the way out of that is to fix immigration, is to fix growth, is to provide opportunity. I mean, if you look around the world, why is Trump successful? Why is Nigel Farage successful? Is because you've got people who can communicate, and they're prepared to say and talk obsessively about the bit that that the mainstream people refuse to talk about. So for 20 years, you couldn't talk about immigration because that was a taboo subject. And they've come out there and it won Trump the first election, and it's going to win Farage.
But it's inequality at its heart, or at least as a perception.
Yeah, inequality is part of immigration. Yes, it's part of the immigration's concern. Right?
That the people who are now voting for reform in the council elections, worth remembering that they took basically 4% of all of the UK councils, so it's not a big stonking they've taken over the country sort of thing. But it's just sort of worth remembering that what reform does is to say to people, yes, basically life is terrible in the UK at the moment. So I've never been able to put 2 and 2 together, but I need to move on from Brexit, because Brexit is the thing that's been a significant contributing factor to this sense of inequality, and reducing economic output, etc. But of course, Farage is in the frame for all of that. But he seems
without Farage, there is no Brexit.
Yeah, I know, and he seems to skate on this stuff, Jack, all the time. What's the UK billionaire? What was his name? What's his name? He appears on that sort of Shark Tank type show a fair bit. What's his name?
Sugar?
Yeah, Alan Sugar. Sir Lord, isn't it?
It's Lord Sugar, yes.
Lord, he's come out and said, Brexit is the worst thing that's happened in my lifetime to the UK. And also said that Boris and Farage should be facing charges at the Old Bailey, Jack, for lying to people. But yeah, look, I mean, Brexit is a disaster, political disaster, because you can't come back from it, Jack. Sir Keir Starmer, it doesn't matter if it's Starmer or Burnham or whoever it is, they can't unlock this stuff now. The genie is out of the bottle.
Yeah. Well, there we are. Reform is certainly going to be a factor in the next election.
But it's a long way off. And
it's a long way off. And certainly Labor's problems are fixable, but I don't think they're even beginning to address them.
All right. But there's also the sort of, when we get to Farage, there's also a parliamentary inquiry into revelations of how he received a $5 million donation undeclared. And he may have some problems of his own all to do with that. he's been claiming it's been leaked improperly. But it's something he should have declared in the first instance, Jack. It's a rather odd sort of argument, isn't it? But it's probably getting him through some more difficult times. He claims it's for his personal security. Keep the thick shakes off his head, maybe. But, Jack, it worries me that if, let's say, the Burnham tilt doesn't work, if he gets rolled at a by-election, what happens then?
Well, I think Starmer survives. Like I said,
Starmer survives, and I think that's a death march.
Yeah, I think if Streeting had done nothing, he might be a chance. But because he came up with this very ineffectual idea of I'm a candidate, sort of, maybe, but not really.
I'm not counting the numbers, but I've got a rough idea what they are.
He's kind of shot himself in the foot. I think it's going to be hard for him to come back from that and look the least bit credible. You know, I mean,
and for if Starmer does hang on, I can't see a comeback.
No. He's past the point of no return in terms of people's attitude to him. He is really despised.
So Burnham fails. Starmer stays, and I can only just see a death march, you know, with flare-ups within the party room all the time, various people throwing their hats in the ring, you know, a sort of death march in politics to the next election.
Yes.
That's what's at stake. So, Andy Burnham, you're just in front. I'm just looking at you've got some polling there too. And as you say, look, there's only 2 or 3 points separate Labor and Reform at the moment.
Yep.
In that by-election polling, so it's really down to the wire, and so much of Labor's fortunes in government.
And it's a by-election. It's a by-election. They can be a little bit unpredictable, you know.
He seems to be. He must be a reasonable campaigner, but dealing with these sort of protest-based parties, and I'm not suggesting that they're not legitimate Reform, but they are protest parties, and they're very, very difficult to knock off, aren't they? Once people have said, I don't like the government, and they've had plenty of reasons not to, not just in the period of this government, but going back 10, 15, almost 20 years, perhaps the end of the Blair government. I don't like government very much, and here's some people who are at least vocalising or verbalising some of my concerns. It becomes very difficult to knock them off.
This is the point I was making earlier is that one of the reasons these parties succeed is that they have someone who's prepared to say the unsayable, to talk about the bit that no one wants to talk about.
And they've got their own channel too, Jack, in GB News. It's pretty much just a Reform channel, isn't it now?
I don't get to see really much of it at all, just a few little clips, but it. I'm not sure everybody on there is Reform. There's a couple of is Camilla
Farage
Tominey
has got a show. Farage has got his own show. There's 2 or 3 have got their own show, and the panels when they have them are just loaded with Reform people.
Yeah,
it's not as if Labor don't appear and the Conservatives don't appear, but there is clearly a heavy bias.
I don't think it makes any.
No, it doesn't make any difference.
It doesn't make any pretense to be other than what it is. GB News.
Oh well, it's the boss. There's Angelos Frangopoulos, who was the boss at Sky News for many years, and he knows that sort of formula, what we might call angertainment, Jack.
Yep.
Where if you look at it for 15 minutes, you're furious. And you want something to be done about something. So Wes Streeting, we're casting him out, Jack. He's not he's never taken himself seriously as a candidate, and I just don't think that's the way it's going to be. Is there anyone else?
Not that I can think of. Not that I can think of that's really credible. You know.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's Burnham or bust, isn't it? Really. And that's going to be really fascinating if it does come to pass.
Well, it's Burnham or follow Starmer out into the desert with no hope of return.
Yeah. It's, you just can't see the sort of U-turn required. They've got to get hold of taxation. They've got to get hold of the economy. They've got to get hold of immigration. And these things are not easily fixed.
This is Tony Blair's list, by the way. You were just reading it.
Yeah, I know. Look, but it's an obvious one, isn't it? But Burnham lumps it all into sort of inequality, and I think there's a large argument to be made about that too. But as we've seen,
but then there's a problem with what he's saying about that is they're on track to have 5 million Brits on disability benefits by the end of the decade. 5 million.
Yeah, lots of reasons for that, though, Jack. And there are incredibly genuine ones. And I know I've spoken to my friends in the UK who sort of have raised the same sort of concerns. But you've got long COVID, you've got all sorts of diseases now that are coming forward that are keeping people out of work.
Almost none of these people come off the disability benefit once they go on it, and 5 million that will not be politically saleable. I mean, the majority of people will just not accept that.
All I'm saying is to you, Jack, and I understand with DSPs and all this sort of, Desi Freeman was getting, who hated the state. Oh, but please send me money every fortnight. Was a DSP recipient. But there are at the same time, we've got a large number of people who can't get into the workforce due to chronic conditions and also mental health problems. These are big issues facing all countries in the West at the moment. All right. I know what you mean. It's very, very, very difficult. All right. Touch screens, Jack. Now you don't drive a car, so what do you care? You can play on your phone as much as you like when you're in the cab.
I can't because I have a balance problem. So when it's moving around, I can't actually read the damn thing very well. But I do sit behind cab drivers who are trying to follow, who always are maniacs about always only follow the little blue line on the phone. And I say, look, I'll show you where to go. Don't worry about it, mate. Because they drive so badly when they're doing this, right?
You sound like Gus Gould. Gus Gould once complained that when he was a manager at Penrith, just kind of in the last 10 years or so, that he get in the car and look at his phone, and the car knew how to get him there. The phone, I should say, knew how to get him there, and he was completely flummoxed by all of this. Another little story is that Gus actually bought George David Freeman's home, Jack. And he reckons he always is a little bit careful doing the gardening around there. You don't want to dig too deep. Touchscreens, back to touchscreens in cars. Now, if we even put a bloody mobile phone in our hand while we're driving, not that you're using it, just in your hand, that is a $500 fine.
Is it
but
really?
If you're looking at your screen, which is immediately to your left, and then take your eyes off the road to press in, let's change the radio, let's put the music on, or I've got some fixed tracks here, or I want to do this or that, and I've got to answer a phone call. That's okay.
Yeah. So I've watched people do this, and it's always just seemed wrong to me because, I grew up like you did. You drive a car and your car radio is just here, and you can reach for the buttons without taking your eye off the road at all, really, because you know where they are. Your hand knows where they are, and you might have 4 preset radio stations or something like that, and you can pick up a CD, have a look at it, and slide it in there and listen to some music. But all the other buttons controlling temperature and stuff were easy to use because you just reached out and touched them. I'd have no idea how to do this on a touchscreen. Huh?
Yeah, look, in terms of lethality, or in terms of creating problems on the road. A Swedish magazine, V Bilagare, I presume that'll be terrible pronunciation, I do apologise, had drivers perform common tasks, radio station, air conditioning, etc., at highway speed. The old Volvo, we still see a few of them around, with physical controls, crush modern touchscreen cars in terms of driver response. The University of Washington, in a Toyota study, had touchscreen interaction showed that touchscreen interaction caused 42% more lane drifting. Of course, we do have things in modern cars that go beep, 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 beep if you start lane drifting. Performance on the screen itself also dropped when driving. Multitasking degrades both driving and the secondary task. It does. Now, I have a Toyota RAV with a screen and touch and all that sort of stuff, but it switches. Essentially, most of the stuff switches off. So if I wanted to dial a number or hit up a name on the screen so it would give me that number, I can't do that. I can only do that when the car is parked. So I use voice activation, Jack, and that is, call my wife, that sort of stuff. And then he goes, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. Call my wife. And by the time I finish screaming at it, Jack, I could have any number for car accidents. I mean, or you'll get a text that's important. And would you like to read it? Yes. I'm sorry, I don't understand you. You just get this all the time. I'm sorry, I don't understand you. And he goes, just answer the bloody text. I end up just yelling at it quite a lot.
Have you
so I'm not sure that that's the answer either. Voice activation is the answer either.
Have you seen the video of the two Scottish fellows in the lift?
In the lift, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. That was from a Scottish comedy where we had two Scottishmen and they were trying to talk to the voice-activated operator of the elevator, and who couldn't understand the broad Scottish accent.
They were trying to say 11. They were trying to get off at 11, and they couldn't make themselves understood.
Yeah, it's very funny. So the answer's there. Look, cars are much safer. I was just looking at US traffic stats, Jack. Traffic fatalities way down. Not so much in Australia, where we had our highest road toll for a number of years last year. And I guess there are all sorts of reasons for that. But one of them certainly is just driver concentration. And a lot of the new cars aren't really equipping us. It's all sort of, let's have some bells and whistles and things like that. I must tell you, Jack, I'm looking at buying an electric car maybe later this year, and I've looked at all of them, and the BYD, which is a very popular model, it's a Chinese manufacturer. The Sea Lion 7, I think, is the one there. It is everything is just touch screens and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure whether it'll change whether I'm going to buy one or not. I'm probably, because I'm a little bit toey about driving an electric car for the first time. I drive a hybrid at the moment. Probably go with a Toyota, just because it's kind of like an electric car for people who haven't driven a lot of electric cars.
Lots of BYDs in this neighbourhood. Yeah.
Oh, there will be, and I forget how many patents have been filed by Chinese motor vehicle manufacturers, but there's literally thousands of them, and there is this sense that the long-standing motor vehicle manufacturers in Japan, Korea, and the United States and elsewhere are really playing catch-up at the moment, not playing catch-up terribly well.
Well, the United States, the manufacturers there are sort of abandoning manufacturing electric cars. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Zeekr, if you're looking for a brand, the brand that friends who bought electric cars here, tell me is the best, of the Chinese electrics, Zeekr.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that I want something. I got into a BYD in an Uber in Melbourne, and it was like being at a rock concert. You know, there was just different coloured lights coming and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and
not for me.
it was very luxurious, but I'm not sure that I'd like to be driving it.
I don't even like going to the sport where they have flashing lights on the signboards and stuff. So
you'd hate going to Marvel Stadium, mate.
Yeah,
Oof, the music there, and to be honest, it's just way too much.
Yeah.
Every now and then you'll see a goal kicked and the music stays off, and you get a sense of relief that the players and the support and spectators have been able to celebrate it without all the nonsense and loud music. But we do sound like a couple of real old blokes here, aren't we? You know, and turn that music down. All right, just very briefly, Jack. We are 6 months from the midterms now. In fact, we're a little bit over that, almost 5. And I've looked at this, quite comprehensively. It certainly looks like the Democrats will win the House.
Probably.
I don't think that's a push, and that's really in keeping with the model for presidents for presidencies, in the last 20, 30 years.
Yep.
The Senate is harder, and it would be an absolute, hammer blow to Trump if he lost both. But the Senate seats that are up for grabs, they'd have to pull off some pretty incredible wins there. Including wins possibly in South Carolina, Michigan, another swing state. Maine open, I think, as well.
It's a chance, yeah.
That would be where their chances lie, I think. Is there a Georgian senator up for grab this time?
Yep.
What about your man, Fetterman? Is he up for grabs this time?
I don't know.
I was just reading John Fetterman, the Democrat senator, who's probably more of a Trump fan than many Republicans in the Senate. He has done very, very well in stock market picks of late, Jack. Well, like many of them have, of course.
Yeah, this seems to be a problem that afflicts Congress persons across the aisle.
It's pretty fixable, isn't it? You just can't trade. You can't trade while you're a Congress person.
Well, and you would need to pay them better to pull that
pay them better. They get paid. I mean, the presidential salary is $400,000.
Yes.
US, which is probably with a conversion probably a little. No, it'd be a bit under what Albo gets.
If you want to look at a good model for this, have a look at Singapore. They pay them a shed load of money. Yeah. But there's no funny business at all.
Yeah, and that you're not bribable if you're going okay. Right?
Yes.
All right. So where we put this just to sum up, Jack? Probably short price favourite for the Democrats to win the House, and I would say they're about 3-1 to win the Senate.
Yeah, about that. And just as a matter of interest, I saw the 2028 Dem presidential nomination poll.
Oh yeah, well, here we go.
And Kamala Harris is now 34-12 ahead of Gavin Newsom. He's losing ground rapidly. No one's making any ground on Kamala Harris at all.
Well, there are a few people who haven't thrown there. So I think the one that can do it is Josh Shapiro, but he's sitting on 9% in the poll here.
Yep.
And that's the Pennsylvania governor. He is a clever boy. J.B. Pritzker, who I presume is not going to run, would be another one. He's only got 2%. Andy Bashir, AOC at 11%. She'd probably be a vice presidential candidate. But Kamala Harris, all I can say about that, Jack, is that it seems to be the polling company's lacking a bit of imagination.
Yeah. Pete Buttigieg's on 10. And you think, well, he's got to be a chance. Until I had a look at the down the list stuff, he actually gets 0% from black voters.
I know. And it was always a knock on him. He's a former US serviceman with a strong history there. Openly gay, of course. Thinks well on his feet, and speaks well, and doesn't mind a bit of argy-bargy as well. But yeah, I mean, if they really are the front runner as Kamala Harris, then they need to fix that straight away. Fair way to go. Yeah. And I guess what happens after what happens in the midterms is going to define a lot about who the next, who the sort of group of primaries are going to be. All right, we're getting into sporting territory here, let's start with the demise of Neil Danaher, a truly inspiring human being, Jack.
I sent you a note the other day asking you if you had forgiven him for, I think it was August 1981, when he kicked 2 or 3 goals in time on to win one at Princes Park.
Well, I wasn't happy about that, Jack, but it goes back a lot longer. We were playing Assumption College in cricket.
This is your school.
I'm a 10 to 15-year-old boy, Jack, making my way in the first for Ivanhoe Grammar, and we had to play them. I think second last game of the season, and there was no finals. It was a round robin competition, and we were neck and neck. So whoever was going to win that game was going to win the tournament, the Associated Grammar Schools tournament. We got about 210, 220, which wasn't a bad score. And then Neil Danaher took an early wicket. Neil Danaher came in batting a 3. He nicked one. And the keeper's taken it right in front of first slip, right? And it was the umpire just obviously didn't see it or whatever, and he was given not out. He was 5. Well, he got 105, and we lost. So for a long time there, Neil Danaher was not my favourite person. We got in quite a lot of trouble. I dare say I was just a young, impressionable kid, but our various team leaders at the time, captains, etc. In fact, the whole team got drilled from the coach and the headmaster about poor sportsmanship and so forth. Our captain refused to shake Neil Danaher's hand and all this sort of stuff. It was pretty ugly for a while. And I think the umps, including the man who remained perfectly still after seeing Neil Danaher straight drive one to first slip. They had their wallets pinched in the changing rooms, Jack. This is all at Ivanhoe. So we got blamed for that too, which is a bit bloody hard to understand because we were out in the field at the time. We certainly weren't responsible for that. So there for a long time there, Neil Danaher, and then I went, Rico 1, Rico 2. Yeah, he deserves this. He deserves Rico 3. And, no, hang on, this is a bit much. And then Rico 5. I think he had 5 ACL reconstructions, and he was probably one of the best of the Danahers, and that's saying something. So he only played 60-odd games, didn't he?
I think he got to 80 at Clanny. I think he had 60 when the first reconstruction happened, but I think he got another 20, eked out another 20 over the next 6 or 7 years. Sheeds made him captain at 20 or 21.
Yeah.
He thought he was the best of the Danahers, and he was sort of an old-fashioned player. He's one of those blokes. He wasn't quite tall enough to play key position, wasn't really quick, but he could do everything else, you know.
He was a very fine overhead mark, big pack marker. So, look, by the time the 5 Ricos came along, I thought, well, that's enough. And then, of course, there was the MND, and his role there has just been nothing short of outstanding. So, something, that will probably lead to him. I mean, I heard him referred to as almost a saint by people like Kevin Sheedy, and it actually resonates a bit. I mean, this is a guy who devoted the significant part of his life when he could have withdrawn from public life. He decided to get out amongst it, and they interviewed on 7:30. They interviewed the MND researchers. Jack, one of the older guys there, said, "Well, before Neil Danaher, there was three of us, and now," he said, "now there's almost 100, and there are clinical trials of this, that, and the other, and the breakthrough. Who knows when it will come, but when it does come, Neil Danaher will be responsible in large measure for that." So a wonderful life, extraordinary life of commitment and courage and generosity.
I'm not sure about a saint, him being a saint. He does have a theology degree, though. He went back and studied at one stage during the knee reconstructions and did a theology degree. Pretty sure his brother Terry wouldn't have done theology for very long.
No, no. Well, there were four of them did play, and I was trying to think of this. Neil, of course, who was a great footballer and
Chris and Anthony.
Anthony had he had played a few games. He played at Essendon, but he also played at Sydney.
Yeah,
and just a wonderful football family. But Neil Danaher's contribution to Australian life is almost out there on his own. It was an extraordinary thing. So
I noticed
the great man.
I noticed yesterday there was news that I believe that the Governor General is going to do the big freeze at the MCG this year, which was a bit of a surprise to me.
Well, yeah, they'll have to be a little bit judicious about that. But, he's promoted all that sort of stuff going back many years now, and really sort of raised awareness around MND. And as I say, obviously, with the sort of money that's gone through that he's generated, as I say, the researchers are in place to hopefully break this one down and provide a cure, because there isn't one at the moment. A wonderful life. And speaking of Essendon, Jack, they decided to honour Neil Danaher and then sack the coach.
Yes. Same day, I think, wasn't it?
It was the same day, pretty much. So Brad Scott was sacked. Essendon, I think, have won one game in a year and a bit, a season and a bit. And of course, the talk is that James Hird there'll be palm fronds along Tullamarine there, Jack, and the fortunate son will have returned. Not the fortunate son. Who am I thinking of? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So is that a good idea, Jack?
It's an odd one. If you think about it, he did come back post the drug thing and coach for a year, and it didn't go all that well. But if you think about it, ask yourself this question: how many of the other 17 clubs would interview James Hird for the coaching role?
What?
I reckon the answer to that is none.
Well, you sort of broke down a little bit of my argument, because he did come back and coach after the supplement scandal, but essentially, if we go back, he hasn't coached really for
10 years.
For a decade,
Yeah.
And footy's changed so much. And I know he's been involved in media and all that sort of stuff, but I don't see a lot of value in that. But it would seem, Jack, that it's at least there's been promoted by Essendon people, Essendon supporters, spectators, members.
Yeah, well, it's a slightly peculiar club in some ways. I think they've painted themselves into a corner with this now, that this is the only way they can move on and get redemption, is to bring him back. And look, maybe it will work, but like I say, I don't think anybody else will interview him for the job. So for a similar job elsewhere. So I can't see that he's a standout pick.
They've got bigger problems than a coach too, haven't they? Just in terms of their list. Their list is nowhere near it. They've got some young guys who are emerging, the trouble with young guys emerging in a losing side is they tend to learn bad habits and they don't get that push along when the side they're playing for is going really well. They can take longer to develop or not develop at all.
And in common with most sides who aren't going well, the list looks a lot worse than it really is because players aren't playing at their best and they're not making players better.
That's what happens, and it's been a bit of a cycle for some of the battling clubs for a while.
Speaking of clubs who are on a bit of a roll, your lot, Carlton, a couple in a row.
I've been enjoying watching them play for a few weeks now, including the game they lost narrowly to Brisbane at the Gabba that saw Michael Voss come off. Look, I was as one of my mates just sent me a text saying, Blues will be Blues in form, the sort of form they're in, they'll beat the Cats by 10 goals. So I did not reply to that. I can spend the entire game watching Harry Dean, who's a young player drafted last year and walked straight into the first and walked straight into a Carlton jump with his old man and just marvel about how good he is at his age as a tall defender. Doesn't make mistakes, mate. So he's terrific, and I actually like watching Jacob Smith, who's been given a role now, more and more a running role in the midfield, and he's a very good user and a very, very good decision maker under pressure. So we're seeing a lot of the young guys coming, and perhaps they've just been unrestrained a little bit. With the coaching coming on, and the other thing you've got to say is that Patrick Cripps, who was written off by pretty much everybody in the media and in the footy media, is probably. I thought he was very close to best on ground against Brisbane. He's been best on ground since. If he's not in your Brownlow calculations at this stage, you're really not paying attention, because he has played some ripping games when Carlton, had their second half fade outs and what have you. But he was always there amongst it. Wonderful leader, wonderful career he's had. It saddens me to think that he'd probably never get to a grand final, but he's a man mountain, a man particularly driven, and been wonderful to watch him play. So we'll see how we go against the Cats. The Cats are flying at the moment, by the way.
What stood out for me with Carlton from all of that over the last few weeks was that they kicked a goal that started with a multiple handball zigzagging out of the defensive goal square, and they took it right down the less populated side of the ground and kicked an easy goal, and they weren't capable of doing that 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, they don't do too. They haven't done too much coast to coast. They are running through the corridor with handball, very aggressive, and look, it means you're obviously missing Charlie Curnow, but once the ball gets in a 1-on-1 and you've got some decent small forwards, you're a chance to score. The other thing I would say too is that the two blokes who came to Carlton from Sydney are all playing really good footy. Ollie Florent was near enough to best on ground last week. The week before, and then Hayward was terrific. Was terrific against Port Adelaide. Kicked some lovely goals. So when you look at the equation there, I think probably Carlton have done a little bit better out of that transfer so far anyway.
Well, right at the moment, Charlie looks like the most expensive Richard Dennis or Earl Spalding that's ever played, right?
Yeah, that's the Gary Lyon talk, that he's a sort of half forward rather than a full forward. I think he's carrying something. There was sort of talk about it.
I'm just saying right at the moment, that's how he looks. Yeah. But,
I saw an interview with Errol Goulden, who reckons he'll be back within about 2 or 3 games after the bye. I think that he was saying after his shoulder injury, and he had to address the Kerno form issue, and he said, "Oh, look, he's carrying a little bit at the moment, and there are times when he's so team-oriented, he'll handball the ball to a teammate, and rather than kick the goal himself and rack up a few." Look, he's a long-term prospect, mate. He's a good player. One thing I've noticed, he's not quite the ground player he used to be, and perhaps that will just come with a bit of confidence. As good on the ground as almost up there with Buddy Franklin, on his day. So yeah, I'm sure it'll turn around. State of Origin during the week, Jack. Did you watch it?
I saw the highlights. I had a thing that had to go to, but yeah, I saw the highlights.
Well, it looked like New South Wales were just unspeakably bad in that certainly in the first half. A lot of drop footy. Queensland just kept coming at them, and I think by about the 20th minute, they'd scored and converted 3 times.
20 zip.
And then it was 26 at half time.
Yeah. When I first saw it screen.
And very wet, but the second half, it offered no real hope for New South Wales until Quentin Pongia. I think it's Quentin Pongia. He was sent from the ground after a shoulder charge, which has been highly controversial. Joey John said it shouldn't have been. Gus Gould wouldn't even address it, fearing that if he was allowed to unleash, Channel 9 might be taken off the air. If we put that aside, and it's very difficult to put aside because you would imagine the New South Wales probably wouldn't have won if they were playing against 13 rather than 12. But Nathan Cleary, just unbelievable stuff. He just proved that he is a little bit better at rugby league than everybody else, particularly around big moments. So a wonderful game. I mean, it just looked so awful at half time, and it just looked like Queensland was just going to stomp all over them. But we did get that wonderful thing. Jack, I'm going to make a wild assertion now that rugby league, when a rugby league game is close and good, it's probably the best sport to watch in the world.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, well, it's certainly. I don't think it is live. I think it comes up it's a perfect game for television.
On TV. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean on TV. Yeah, that's what I think. All right, and Premier League, Jack. Just to confirm, Arsenal have won the trophy and they've been given the chocolates. I think they play PSG on Saturday morning our time.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah,
and that will be that if you're not a soccer fan,
or is it Sunday morning?
Sorry, that's what I meant. I mean Saturday. I was going to say Saturday night, Sunday morning. And if you're not a soccer fan, you should watch that game because it's going to be a corker. PSG just lined up with guns, and Arsenal too are in pretty good nick, and they've got some fine players. So it'll be just about one of the best club games you'd ever want to see. Down the other end, Jack, West Ham gone, and a little bit of a Boris Johnson line there too, mate, where he set up the club with a deal that's not going to stand the test of time. Then we say, tell me what you know about it.
West Ham have the second biggest average crowd for this year.
Oh, it's a huge club, Jack. Yeah. It's a huge club. They were leaders in soccer hooliganism in the 1980s as well.
Yeah, they were.
It's a huge club, and it must be just distressing for their supporters. Most of them from London's east.
And their deal with the Olympic Stadium is that the borough they pay the borough £2.5 million for the stadium, and the stadium picks up all the rest of the costs, and it's going to be half that from now on. Honestly,
so they pay 1.25.
Yeah.
for use of the Olympic Stadium.
Stadium,
Well, they don't
yeah.
call it that anymore, do they?
No, it's
They don't-
called London Stadium or something
Yeah,
like
something
that.
like that, yeah.
I mean, nobody wanted to play there was the problem, but
Well, it hasn't done West Ham any good
Good,
anyway, but it is a bit startling. I mean, it's a cutthroat competition. They talk about the brutality of AFL around sack coaches and what have you, but this is just really, it's all about the money. And when we look at clubs like Liverpool, who really have invested in players, paid big transfer fees, and so they ended up fifth.
Yes.
So just pulling the checkbook out isn't always the answer. But then when we get down to Tottenham Hotspurs, you've got to say you've got to spend some money. You've got to get some players in there. All right.
Indeed.
Well, that takes us out, except for racing, Jack. You've been following the racing in your backyard there.
Yeah, Romantic Warrior, who's won a Cox Plate down Australia. He won a 2,400 metre race to the Triple Crown, the Standard and Shaders Cup here, and there was a 15-second inquiry by the stewards as to whether he should keep the race because there was a bit of a bump, but the Japanese fans are very unhappy. I got to tell, and James McDonald, I think, got 3 meeting suspension and a 20,000 Aussie fine. But if you have a look at the head-on shot, it's a month to start with, at least a month.
Yeah. So that was romantic. He was the rider of Romantic Warrior.
Yeah, and Joe Moreira was on the Japanese horse.
He's checked the Japanese horse,
and he you can put them in a pocket, but you can't push them in a pocket with your elbow up to get them out of the way.
Sounds like the 1954 Melbourne Cup, Jack, with the hoisted horse getting rolled by a ne'er-do-well.
So
rising
there
fast.
you go.
Should have won 2 in a row, but got badly checked, and it was carrying a couple of bar fridges as well from the handicappers after its second Caulfield Cup win. Probably going to tell that story at length at another time. All right, well, I'll just that takes us to the end of the show. Just want to thank Hong Kong Jack for his opinions today. We haven't quite worked out what we're doing next week, Jack, but we'll talk about what specials we've got.
We'll sort something out.
Yeah, and we might. Why don't we do the post-pandemic stuff? Why don't we do that? Because I don't reckon anyone's really dealt with that issue.
I'm certain they haven't.
Just haven't dealt with it, and pandemics are most unusual things. You're lucky to have one in your lifetime, or unlucky, I suppose. But there was this long period there in 2020 where we weren't quite sure if we were going to make it. And I think that's sort of driven a lot of public policy around it.
And just one thing to remember about this over the next week, we actually had a whole set of protocols as to how to deal with the pandemic, as did every other country in the Western world, and nobody followed them.
Well, the other thing, Jack, is we actually had quarantine facilities and we refused to use them. The federal government said you can't use them. Anyway, all of that we will be dealing with next week, and we look forward to bringing that to you. Jack, most remiss of me when we were talking about the budget, and there was a quote there from Baseman, and I fully intended to put that in, but he said of the budget, look. The CGT anyway, and negative gearing changes are complex, and average punters have no time or inclination to delve into them. It was detail and complexity that lost short in the 2019 election. I read fairly widely, yet had never heard of a discretionary testamentary trust until a week ago. Should get out more, mate. The Liberals fully understand slogans and short grabs and how they win elections. Toxic tax, stop the votes, who can you trust, death tax, and so on. Jim Chalmers should point out frequently that just 10% of the population receive 83% of the benefits of the current CGT discount, and the only 5% are profiting, and only and the only 5% are profiting from family trusts. Who is paying for all of this? About 90% of average wage, or 90% of wage earners who do not enjoy these tax benefits. But Ray, Baseman, we love you, and look, I think you deserve a gig with the Labor Party, helping them sort it out. Makes a bit of sense to me, some of that stuff.
Just a second. When you get your tax assessment, et cetera, does the government divide it up and pretend to tell you where your tax dollars are spent?
No, of course not.
I saw one the other day, an Australian tax assessment that purported to say, well, look, of your money the tax that you spent, X dollars has gone on this, Y dollars.
Do they? Yeah.
Yeah. Very odd. Very odd.
Yeah, and prone to slip-ups, I would have thought.
Yes.
Anyway, but look, just thanks to Ray for his comments, and I do apologise for not bringing them in while we were talking about the budget. But just quick reminder that anyone who listens can ask questions, make comments, do whatever you like, and you know how to get hold of us. All right, folks, that's it for the 29th of May 2026, and we'll be back with you next week. See ya.